Hello, welcome to White Navy Gardening and Worm Farm. I apologize for the delay. Hi, Cece. How are you? Yeah, so today, hi, Helpy. It's been a while. How are you doing? So today we are going to be discussing how your worms perform over the winter. So please feel free to share such information if you so desire. Hopefully, if there are newcomers to the live who are thinking about worm farming or they have just started a worm farm, the information that is presented may be of benefit to them. Hi, Mom. CFP says, yes, too long. I'm doing well, thank you. Trying to get a fall to-do list together. How are you? Okay, yes, I'm doing okay. Thankfully, I'm doing okay. Good to know you're doing okay as well. Okay, Cece said she's doing well. Me too, my dear. I'm working on my fall to do list. I have a general list of what needs to be done, but then to go into detail as to what each of those tasks entails and if I need to get material to get them done, then I haven't reached that far yet. So I'm still working on my fall to do list. Unfortunately for me, my fall to do list has to be done by the end of September. Yes, it has to be done by the end of September because apart from looking after my worms, I don't think I'm going to be going outdoors for the entire winter, all 6, 7 months of it. Yes, so unless I'm going to supermarket, of course. So I have to try and get everything that needs to be done outdoor by done by the end of September. Okay, you guys are just saying greetings. Okay, so if you guys run a worm farm, where do you keep your worms? I keep my worms in my garage, all of my worms, but I make it a general rule where even if it is just for the winter, for each type of worm that I have, I make sure that I have a small amount of them inside my house, just in case, because you never know. Sometimes something may go wrong out there and the worms may die off. So I try to keep a small amount inside the house so that if something go wrong, then I don't have to go and purchase all these worms again. So I can just restart. So, yep. But my worms are kept in the garage. CLP says, I am thinking I need a few more worm bins in my basement this year. Okay. So that's where you keep them in general, in your basement, LP? Yes. So, like I was saying, I keep a few of each type of worms in my house just in case something should go wrong. Now, for those who are on the live who may be new to worm farming or considering worm farming, some facts regarding temperatures that worms prefer. For red wigglers, they like temperatures between 50 and 70 degrees and 77 degrees Fahrenheit, which is about 10 to 25 degrees Celsius. The European night crawlers tend to like similar temperature, so they like between 55 and 78 Fahrenheit, which is about 12 to 25 and a half degrees Celsius. Let's see, LP says yes, in the basement, drops down to about 50 in the winter or 10 degrees C. Okay, okay. Yeah, just enough to keep them going, eh? And then for the African night crawlers, they like temperatures between 70 and 85 degrees Fahrenheit, which is about 21 to 29 and a half degrees Celsius. And then the blue worms, they like temperatures between 70 and 80 Fahrenheit, which is about 21 to 26 and a half degrees Celsius. So the African night crawlers and the blue worms, these are the ones that are in the most danger when it comes to winter. So for all the worms, you want to make sure that the lowest temperature that they're exposed to is 10 degrees over the winter. So that is one of the reasons why I'm asking how your worms are doing, um, and letting you know the temperatures that is appropriate so that if you're new to worm farming, you can keep your worms safe. Because when it comes on to winter, worms tend to slow down. Okay, so do you find that your worms eat the same amount of food during the winter as they would in the summer? Let's see. LP says, my blue worm survived the basement last year, though their numbers went down a bit while the red wrigglers population increased in their bin. Okay, okay. I don't have any blue worms, but this time I have African night crawlers that I got from Russell. So, oh hi, Han White. Yes, I have African night crawlers that I got from Russell. So I don't know how they're going to perform over the winter. For now, they're in my garage, but I may bring them all inside the house. I don't know yet because I'd have to find some location to keep them where they're out of out of my husband's sight. Yes, and somewhere where I can just access them quite easily. So they may be in the house for the winter. We'll see. I'm just hoping that they'll be content if I bring them indoors and not decide to crawl out because, yeah, I don't want my kids to get panicky if they see these large worms crawling around. They're used to handling the red wrigglers, but not these large African night crawlers. So we'll see what happens where that is concerned. Let's see. LP says, my worm eats less in the winter for sure. Okay. Yes. As that's the same experience that I have. They definitely eat slower. As you may know that my garage is heated, but then the doors don't have any insulation and they do not have any weather stripping on it. So cold air constantly come into the garage. So it can keep the garage cooler than it actually should be. So because of that, that is one of the reasons why my worms slow down. They slow very, they slow down drastically in the winter. Yeah, so I'm hoping that I will at least get the doors insulated and weather stripped. And then for my furnace that is in the garage, it whoever installed it years ago, they just put the furnace in there. They didn't create any vents to distribute the heat evenly. So that too helped to just keep just a small portion of the garage warm and then the rest of it is cold. So hopefully I can get all of that sorted out this year because at least then I will be able to keep the temperature in the garage consistent, and then that might help to improve the rate at which the worms eat. I don't expect that they're going to eat the same rate as they do in winter because it still is going to be colder, but at least increase the temperature so that it's not fluctuating on them. Okay, so let's see. And White says, I don't know if mine do. I just feed them every other day. Oh, okay. Okay. Yes. So worms, they're very sensitive to changes in temperature, even if it is just 1 degrees or 1 degree temperature change, they can sense that. And if there's any change in barometric pressure, then they can sense that as well, and they tend to respond accordingly. So that is why it is so important to have them somewhere where the temperature is fairly consistent. Okay. So what about reproduction? Do you find that your worms reproduce at the same rate as they would in the summer, or Does the rate increase or does it decrease? Well, for my worms, they do slow down in the winter, the rate of reproduction. And you would think that because it is colder, that maybe they would try to reproduce more in case something goes wrong, but they don't. Of course, last year when, well, that wasn't last year, that was February of this year, when some of my worm bin froze, the worms did reproduce more. They produced the cocoons, but then the cocoons are not going to hatch while it is cold because then it's going to die. So the cocoons will stay there and wait until the condition in the bin is ideal, and then the cocoons will hatch. So when the bins froze, the worms reproduce more, or at least lay more cocoons, but in general, they don't reproduce more in the winter. I'm hoping that at least when I get the garage doors sorted out and the heating in them sorted out, that I will see a bit improvement where that is concerned. But yes, in general, worms tend to slow down in the winter, irrespective of where they are. Of course, if they are somewhere where you can monitor the temperature, where at all times the temperature is the same, then that makes it easier for the worms to continue being active throughout the year. But for most of us, that's not really much of an option. Yes. Okay. Yeah. So hopefully, I will be able to get that done in the next couple of weeks. A week. I think we only have a week left in the month. I cannot believe September is finished already. It feels as if it just got started. Okay, you said sorry you had to run outside, so if I asked you anything, you missed it. Yeah. Okay, yeah. I didn't ask anything, so you didn't miss anything. Oh, I was just asking about the rate of reproduction for the worms in the winter. If you find that your worms reproduce faster at the same rate or slower than they would in the winter. So that was a question that I asked. Let's see, do you think deeper beds materials is better for insulating them in the winter? Yes, definitely. Definitely. Um, Food scraps tend to heat up a bit if you have a deeper bin and you have a lot of it in the bin, but you have to be careful that it doesn't heat up too much where it's going to be harmful to the worms. So deeper material would definitely work as an insulation. And based on my experiment that I am doing with my African night crawlers, I find that feeding the worms worm chow, and instead of just sprinkle it on the surface, if you put it together in a confined location, then it tends to heat up. So maybe that can be an option to help keep the bins warmer in the winter. But of course, if you're going to do that, you have to make sure that it is in just a few locations in the bin so that there's a cool area where your worms can go, because sometimes it can heat up too much. For the African night crawlers and punks and the blue worm, it might not be so bad because they prefer the heat, although they don't want to be too hot either. But for the Canadian night crawlers, European night crawlers, and the red wrigglers, then you have to make sure that it's not producing more heat than they can handle. Yes, I agree with you, LP. October is almost here already. It's as if the time is just flying. The summer seemed as if it was a bit long, and then all of a sudden it just seemed as if the winter is trying to catch up on us. Not looking forward to it at all. I love I love to see the autumn, but once autumn is here, I'm very upset. I'm very upset because I know it means that the winter is just around the corner. Let's see. LP says they're huge. That's a good call. I did had lots of food sometimes last winter and brought temperatures up. I use a thermometer in my blue bin, red wiggler, my blue worm and red wiggler mixed bin. Okay. Rosa says the winter gives me time to breed different species other than the ANC. The ANCs get to sleep for the winter, but when they wake up in spring, the ANC outperform any other worm. Oh, that's good to know. That's good to know. And hi. Yes, that's good to know. So I guess mine will be sleeping for the winter then. Yes, I'm still not sure what I'm going to do with them yet, if I'm going to bring them indoors or I'm going to let them stay in the garage. I guess that's going to depend on after I manage to, if I manage to finish insulating and running the heat or distributing the heat in the garage evenly, what temperature it can maintain. I guess that is going to determine whether or not, but I think I'm going to bring in some of them just to be on the safe side. Yes. So do your worms produce more castings in the winter, or should I say the same amount of castings in the winter as in the summer, or do they produce less? For me, with all that is going on with my garage not being properly heated, they definitely produce a whole lot less than they do in the winter, sadly. Because I do expect that they will slow down, and I expect that they will be producing less castings, but the amount of castings that my worms are producing during the winter, it's very low for the amount of worms that I have. So I know definitely that the doors of the garage is a big issue. So I'm gonna try and get that started out as quickly as possible. Okay, yours produce a lot more in warmer weather. Okay, and same for unwhite. Yes, that's good. I wish I could actually get my garage to have similar temperatures to what we would have in the summer, so I can keep them going. But then I'm a bit concerned about how I'm going to be feeding all these worms because they did multiply over the summer. So now I'm wondering how I'm going to be feeding them because I don't want to feed them just finished compost, but then I'm not producing enough food scraps from my own household to feed them. I still haven't gotten around to calling various restaurants yet to see if I can get supplies from them. Yes, and I have so much to do, I don't even know if I have the time to get around to making those calls, but I think I need to get on it because for now they have enough food based on the foliage that I harvested from the garage from the foliage that I harvested from the garden, but then it's not enough to carry them through the winter. And I need to make some trip to the compost depot as well because, oh, yeah, I'm going to have to do a bit of sifting too, separate out all the undesirables. So I'm going to have to do that sometime next week. Let's see. Person says, my worm produce less in the winter for me only because management of space is all indoors. Okay. Okay. Okay, so that sounds as if you didn't have a space issue, your worms could be producing more castings in the winter. Well, that's nice. At least there's something that you can do, provided you get the space management under control. Sometimes that's not an option, but at least you know that they would be producing pretty well if you didn't have a space issue. Oh, hi, Melanie. How are you doing? So, do you guys find that your worms perform better some years than other years? Or is it pretty much the same every year? I find that there are some years when my worms do perform better than others. I don't know what the difference is. Sometimes it is temperature related, but then for the most part, temperature each year is fairly consistent. But then I do find that even when the temperature is consistent from year to year, there are some years where they just do so well, and then there are those years that they are just doing okay. So I don't know what it is that caused the difference, because it's not as if they are being fed less, it's not as if they are being cared for less or anything of the sort. So I don't know why, but some years they just seem to do better than others. Russell says, otherwise, I always have some ANC producing all the times. The production is the same in the summer as winter. Oh, nice, nice. That's very nice. Okay, this is your first full year LP. You started last June, so I will find out this winter. Okay, okay, yeah. Well, you're doing pretty well, so keep up the good work. Yes, you. I'm sure you have learned a lot over the years. Well, over the year, over the year of worm farming, you do have some practical information to share with us from time to time. So, I think you have learned a lot. But that's what is so interesting about worm farming. There's just so much to learn about it is, and it is so much fun. I'm looking forward to playing with my African night crawlers this winter, whether they are in the garage or in the house. I certainly will be watching them a lot. I need to introduce the kids to them as well and see what they will do, if they're going to be afraid of them or they're going to be excited. CLP says, thank you. I have no doubt, and you have been a great addition to my educational resources. I do love it. Okay, you're welcome, my dear. Those ANC are so big and so cool. Yes, they seem to be content at the moment, so I'm happy for that. They are settled down into their homes. Occasionally, you might see one or two of the large ones on the side of the bin, but as for the other bin, you don't see any crawling up the sides. They seem to be pretty contented, and I haven't seen, apart from the first night when they crawled, some of them crawled out, I haven't seen any attempt to come out of the bin. So I think they're quite comfortable where they are for now. I know they can't stay in that location for the winter. So I'm thinking if they're going to be in my garage, I'm going to be putting them right on the table underneath the vent, underneath the furnace, so that I can be sure that they're warm enough. Yes, I have to do some rearranging in the garage because I have quite a few things stored close to the furnace. So I'm going to have to rearrange so that I can find spot to put those worms. Well, we'll see what happens with them. I'm sure it will be an interesting journey. So you guys, when you're taking care of your worms, do you find that you have to source food from somewhere else, or do you produce enough foods around the house that you can use to feed your worms? Or do you probably have neighbors and friends that you can get supplies from? A lot of times I think about getting food scraps from neighbors or relatives around, but then I seem to have an issue with asking people for things, which is not necessarily a good thing. It can be good and it can be bad. It has its advantages and disadvantages, but I feel like I am being a burden. So sometimes, even though the stuff, I know they're throwing out the material, it still feel as if I'm being a burden to ask. So at least if I go to the restaurants, I know that they're willing to share. Some of them, it feels less of a burden. So I'm gonna try and see if I can start sourcing some of those food scraps. So let's see. Okay, so on White says she produced more than enough for our worms. Okay, that's nice. I guess as you if you go commercial, then it becomes more difficult to produce enough food scraps for the worms, which is what's happening in my case. Yeah, so I'm gonna have to work on that, get some food scraps for them, and the sooner the better. I'm just not looking forward to going out in the winter to get them. Let's see. LP says, I have enough. I keep stuff frozen, but I also use plant matter from outside. Good, good. Russell said he barely has enough food scraps for the red wigglers. Yes, once you go commercial, it's a bit more tricky. It's trickier to find food scraps around the home to feed them. And especially if you have a large garden, then it might not be too bad. But I mean, how long can you keep the material from your garden? That's another thing. Yeah, so unfortunately for me, the trees outside are practically all yellow. I think maybe about 60-70% of them are yellow and the leaves are starting to fall now. So I'm gonna have to start gathering the leaves. The backyard, the trees in the backyard, I don't know if it is because I have the compost bins right up against one of the trees, and then the other tree, it is fairly close, so its roots runs towards the compost as well. So those trees, they always take a really, really long time to turn yellow and for the leaves to fall off. In fact, sometimes the following year, the leaves dry up, but they're still there on the tree because they're still sapping all the moisture and the nutrients from underneath the compost bin. Sometimes, even though I've concreted the bottom of the compost bins that are close to the trees, I don't know, they crawl up the side of the concrete and into the worm bin. And when you're harvesting your worms and your castings and whatever else is in the bin, you'll find that you have these tree roots to deal with. It's annoying because I concreted it for that very reason, but it still finds its way in there, but not too bad, not as much as before. I'm just hoping that it won't grow to the point where it cracks the concrete. But we'll see. We'll see what happens where that is concerned. But anyway, still not finished harvesting from my garden yet. Yes, I have. I still have potatoes to harvest. I harvested or at least attempted to harvest a few sweet potatoes that was growing with my corns in the raised bed. They did not produce anything, but for that bed, I'm not really surprised because they were overcrowded with kidney beans and corns. So I'm not surprised that they didn't produce anything in there. Not expecting much from the sweet potatoes. I'm not sure what to expect from the Japanese yam, but we'll see. I think I'm going to try and get those harvested because this week and into next week we're supposed to have temperatures in the 20s, and then after that everything is going to be in the teens. So I'm trying to get everything done next week so I don't have to be out there. I have a good amount of worms. I wouldn't really say that it is a lot. My worms always seem to suffer some form of mishap because of cold weather or because I'm constantly selling them, so the population doesn't get to be what I would like it to be. I wish I could take a year off and not sell any and then just let them breed for that year. And then after that, yeah, but that's not really much of an option. Let's see. LP says, I harvested sweet potatoes that were all swirled around like a pile of. At least you were able to harvest. I'm not really expecting much from the sweet potatoes at all. Yes, not really expecting much from mine at all. So I think I'm gonna try again next year with the sweet potatoes, but I think I'm going to be doing it differently this time around because I'm going to be starting a few of them, not a lot, and I'm going to start them in November. Last year, I started in November, a few slips in November, and then I keep cutting slips off it to plant. So I think that because I keep cutting slips off it to plant, the ones that I cut and plant, those did not have enough time. Some of them died, so I don't know if it was the older ones or the younger ones that died. So it's kind of inconclusive whether or not they would have done well, and then with all the pest issues. So I'm going to try again with it next year. If next year there is no good result, then I'm not going to try. I'm going to see what's going on with the Japanese yam though, because the Japanese yam, the Japanese purple yam, that one is hard to get here. You see it occasionally, and sometimes when you buy it at the store, it's better not to buy it because it has pest issues or it's drying out or something is wrong with it. So that one I'm going to be trying with to see. I hope they do well. Yes, let's see. Russell says, I buy 50-pound bags of chicken layer and rabbit pellets, grind, mix 3 cups layers to 1 cup rabbit, mix and top feed. Oh, okay. I need to get a picture of that formula. LP says, I swear if I could share a picture, I would. I didn't know they would do that. Yeah. Melanie says, in one bed I harvested and get only 1 potato. Oh, I'm sorry, my dear. It's can be so disheartening when you plant and you see the plants looking all good and then you go to harvest and there's nothing there to harvest. Hopefully, hopefully it won't be a loss next year. I'm not sure what to expect for this year, but hope by the end of the week we should be able to tell. Russell says, LP, it is not so much that I have a lot of worms. What I have is 100% control of my worm population. Oh, nice. I like that. Yes, I like that, having a full control over your worm population. I'm not there yet. There are too many things that I need to get done before I can actually get to that point. But I'm working on it. I'm working on it. Let's see. LP says I grew 5 rooted slips in a 25-gallon bucket or bag. I think my soil wasn't loose enough and maybe I didn't water enough. Yes, because those root vegetables, they definitely require loose soil and they definitely require frequent moisture. And speaking of moisture, I've been neglecting whatever else remains in my garden. Going on to 3 weeks since I've given them any water. But anyway, and I think maybe I should have continued at least watering the sweet potatoes and giving them a better chance. But there's just so much to be done. I have to be playing catching up now to try get all those things that I didn't get done in the summer, trying to get them done now. But hopefully next year I'll be better prepared to deal with both the worms and the garden. LP says, well, Melanie, congrats on that one. One bag of my potatoes gave me a little scraps. Little scraps. Mm. LP says, well done, Russell. I'm still trying to get 100% control of my life. Uh, I don't know if any of us are at that point yet where we have 100% control of our lives. We might be close, but then time and unforeseen occurrence always plays its part. Yeah, we don't have control over that, but yeah, we can try. Yes. Okay, so let's see. In another 8 or so minutes, I'm going to be ending the live because my daughter is going to need to go back to school. Yes. So I have quite a few things that I need to work on. I was panicking. I am still panicking, but not as much because when I checked my weather last week, it was saying that Saturday, tomorrow is not going to be the only warm day, and after that, it's supposed to start getting cold. But then I see where the forecast changed and says that all of next week is going to be in the 20s. So I'm very thankful because I get enough chance to sort out my garden and my worms. Yes, I still haven't harvested one of my apple trees yet. I don't know what it is waiting on to for the apples to be ready for harvesting. They're changing color and everything. We had strong, really strong winds yesterday, and I thought, oh, for sure the apples are blown off. Not even one of the apples fell off the tree. Yes, I think I'm gonna have to pick them myself because they obviously don't seem to be ready. I don't know much about apples growing them. I know that when they're ready to shake the tree, then they tend to fall off. But I don't know. I don't know why this tree, it's the first time it is producing. I don't know why it is behaving like that. It could be also that where it is, I don't water it. So maybe that can slow it down because I heard reports that some who grows apple across Canada. And if they were in the regions where they're getting a lot of rain, then their apples tend to ripen very quickly. So I'm thinking maybe because I'm not watering the apple tree, I haven't watered it since the before it start blossoming. So I don't know if maybe that's why it's taking so long, but hopefully I'll treat it better next year since as this year it starts to produce. Let's see. LP says probably I shouldn't be aiming for 100. No, my dear, you aim for 100 and settle for somewhere close to 100 because you know you won't achieve the 100. But if you aim for less, then you might get less than what you're aiming for. So aim for the best, and then whatever happens, you'll be content with that. Yeah, but don't aim for less than 100. LP says I would think the ANC would make for a great show and tell at school. Yes, I don't really know if there's anyone here that raise ANC. I know you can get red wigglers here from some places to buy. Canadian night crawlers definitely because you just have to go to a gas station or somewhere that sells fishing worm. But you may be able to get European night crawlers. I'm not sure. I think there are very few people who have ever asked me for European night crawlers. The red wigglers are the popular ones. And then for the Canadian night crawlers, most people don't really seem to raise them. There might be a few companies that raise them for fishing, but domestically, I don't really know of anyone who raised them. But African night crawlers and blue worms, because they require heat to grow, I don't really know of anyone who actually raised them here, or if anyone actually does. So I might be the first. Yes. Unfortunately, I don't think we'll be able to sell the African night crawlers as fishing worms because they like heat, and when you're fishing, you want your worms to be alive. And the Canadian waters, the Saskatchewan waters, it's not something I would go in because it is very cold, even on the hottest day in summer. So it's not something that I would go in. So I know that the worms, the African night crawlers, definitely would not make good fishing worms because they would just die as soon as they touch the water. Yeah, so if you're selling African night crawlers here, I think you'd have to sell them for pet food. Yes, but Definitely. Or for if someone wants to raise them just for the castings, but definitely they wouldn't do well as a fishing worm at all. Let's see, Melanie says, in another bed it was not bad, but most of the big ones get damaged with the fork. Oh, still have five more to harvest. Oh, you grew a lot. Yes, I think I have what, three containers leave to harvest. And one of them I don't know what to expect. Well, two of them I don't know what to expect because the foliage is just bright, luscious dark green. They're just a luscious dark green. They don't seem to be anywhere close to being ready for harvesting yet. One of them I can see that it is ready for harvesting, but don't know what's going on with those two. Yeah, well, I'm still going to harvest them at the end of this week anyway because if I have baby potatoes, then that would be awesome. Let's see. LP says potatoes are tricky. I think I'm still debating if I'll grow them again next year. Okay. Yeah, so I definitely will be growing potatoes next year, but I'll be growing less. You don't need to leave. I will end the live soon. I'll end it in about a minute or two. Let's see. LP says, that's nice. You have so many apples. Do you make applesauce? No, I don't make sauces at all. No type of sauce. Yeah. It's something I'm gonna have to learn to do, but for now, that's not. It's easier for me to make jam with it or to make juices or stuff like that, but I don't make sauces. I don't can stuff. Um, yeah. So yes, there you go. Aim for 100 and accept what I get. Russell says, I wonder if schools would be interested in dissecting large ANCs, science or biological class. That's a good question, Russell. Never thought of that. I could find out from the universities here. Anyway, my daughter's school is about to start back, so I am going to have to say goodbye to you guys. Let's see. My wife says, no, I'm afraid to harvest my sweet potatoes. Anyway, guys, thank you for being here and for your support. I hope to see you again on Monday. So take care and have a lovely weekend.